Thank you. The time is now 5:08. Good evening and welcome to the August 3rd, 2023 virtual board meeting tonight regarding board and superintendent evaluations. I would like to ask everyone to turn off any wireless communication devices to avoid any technical interference in the meeting. Also, we will have Spanish interpretation services available this evening. Ms. Jasmine Gutierrez, would you please announce the Spanish interpretation is available by clicking on the globe icon at the bottom of the screen? Cindy, I saw Jasmine earlier. Is she here? I don't see her. Cindy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't see Jasmine to give the announcement. Is
She's
there
here.
anyone else?
Jasmine, we're unable to hear you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Right now, we're having a little technical difficulty with the interpretation app. So Ms. Adeline is trying to get her back into the room.
Okay, I appreciate that. Is there anyone else on the call that can give us this interpretation in Spanish?
What do you need me to say again?
Would you please announce that Spanish interpretation is available by clicking the globe icon at the bottom of the screen?
Okay. Buenas tardes. Esta tarde tenemos interpretación disponible simplemente por oprimir el botón que tiene el número global que dice interpretación abajo. Si necesita interpretación en español, por favor, oprima ese botón. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Board Member Madeline Lasalia. For those who are not able to observe now, this meeting is being recorded and can be accessed for later viewing on the PGCPS YouTube channel. Ms. Adeline, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Mickens-Murray, I'll call the roll.
I appreciate
Mrs.
that.
Adams Stafford. Yes, Mrs. Adams Stafford.
Here.
Mr. Briggs.
Present.
Dr. Harris.
Here.
Mrs. LaSalle Frazier.
Present.
Mr. Murray.
Here.
Mrs. Rout.
Present.
I see that Dr. Zipporah Miller has joined us. Dr. Z. Miller.
Present.
Mrs. Mickens-Murray.
Present.
Ms. Rivera Forbes.
Present.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum, but we don't intend to do any business tonight, but I needed the roll call for the record. Colleagues, first we will have introductions of our facilitators and when he arrives, our superintendent. So Mr. Marty Schaefer, could you please introduce yourself and your colleague, please, from Franklin Covey. Appreciate it.
Yeah, what a joy for Franklin Covey Education to get to participate, Judy, with you and your team again. And so my name is Marty Schaefer. I have an undergraduate degree in urban planning. I have a doctorate degree in leadership, and I've written a framework called Great Boards that came from my 18 years of serving on a board in Washington State, whereby we were able to create professional development that comes alongside the normal training that we would get on boards as governance or administration. And so what we've done is develop training that really creates a cohesive team along with leadership development in Franklin Covey. So that's what we brought, and I'm excited to continue to work with this amazing board. And about a year ago when we came out, we did a session with you. My colleague, Darren Kenley, came as well, and he's from your area. So Darren, would you come off mute and introduce yourself and give us a little background, please?
Absolutely. I'm excited to be a part of this board. I am a Prince Georgian. I'm a graduate of Prince George's County Public Schools. I was glad to have the opportunity to start doing some work with the board about a year or so ago. And
Okay,
I'm
are you
excited to
on?
continue that work.
Thank you, Darren. And Darren, how long have you been with Franklin Covey?
This be my 9 years in later this month.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that, Genius. And Darren's being very modest. He has a very strong educational background and service and commitment to education. So Darren, thank you for being who you are.
Thank you so much. And I see that our guest of honor, our new superintendent, Mr. Millard House II, has joined us. I'm sorry about the glitches, and we will ensure that that never happens again. So Superintendent House, could you please introduce yourself and just share a little bit with us of comments that you wish to share with us?
Be glad to do so, Chairman Mickens-Murray. First of all, thank you all for having me. I'm excited to finally collectively have the opportunity to address you all. And Chairman Mickens-Murray, if you don't mind, I'd love to take 5 to 8 minutes just to not only share a little bit about myself, but to share a little bit about kind of where we're going in terms of an entry plan and goals. As well, if you don't mind.
That's
as
fine.
you all know, I'm Millard House. Okay, good deal. As you all know, I'm Millard House, and excellence and inclusion and equity have been really a driving force behind my entire career. The diversity and excellence of Prince George's County embodies the values and, quite frankly, the dreams that I hold dear in terms of children moving forward to grow and develop in the manner that they should. These pillars not only shape every decision I make, but they'll also be a major foundation for the action this administration undertakes moving forward. I want you all to know as a board that a commitment to equitable opportunities and resources for all will really guide the work and everything that we do. Now, toward that end, I've developed a first 90-day transition and entry plan, which is based on listening, learning, and leading. This isn't, quite frankly, anything new. This is something that I've had the opportunity to do before. This will be an opportunity to guide my focus in areas as the new superintendent in Prince George's County. Now, since taking the helm of the system, I think I've been in place now 19 or 20 actual full work days in the district since July the 3rd. My first order of business has been to immerse myself in this diverse community. And I've definitely done so over the course of the last 20 work days. I've visited schools, I've met educators, administrators, of course, have connected with board members, attended systematic professional development conferences for our principals and assistant principals just yesterday as well, and also engaged with families and community members whose roots run extremely deep in Prince George's County. For some of you that may not be aware, in the late 60s, my father had 2 older brothers that migrated to the DC area. So as one of my uncles would say, I have dozens of cousins in the area as well in Prince George's County in Southeast DC. Now, as you all know as well, I think most of you have met Quincy, my chief of staff who's on the call. I've also assembled an entire executive team, blending leaders with diverse experience and shared commitment in reference to what I want to focus on and what we want to focus on as a board when it's all said and done. Now, over the next few weeks, I'll continue to listen and learn, and I'll be taking account of what's working and what's not working, identifying areas for improvement, and identifying the kind of steps we need to take to realize our vision for moving forward in the Prince George's County Public Schools. Now, following the vital engagement, I'll present a comprehensive report based on all of the different observations that I've come about over the course of my entry plan time. my entry plan objectives, and I'll send these to you or have Quincy to send these to you all so you won't necessarily have to write them down. But my entry plan objectives are: number one, assessing core academic operational areas to ensure alignment between organizational capacity and the strategic plan goals that are aligned to student success. Number two, engaging with employees and families as I have, and that includes community members. And I really want to gain a deeper understanding of this school system. That's something that I can't take for granted. It's not about coming in here with a plan. It's about coming in here and engaging and gaining that deeper understanding of the school district before moving forward with any major plans. And the third piece is promoting positive work environments to ensure and develop the kind of relationships that are focused on student needs and outcomes as well. Now, I am reviewing all aspects of PGCPS and the operational focus of this school district in the entry plan. I'll do that by, number one, student achievement growth and support data, taking a close look at how and what portions of this strategic priority in the math and social and emotional learning and school climate enhanced achievement to ensure that I'm completely up to speed on everything that I need to focus on as a superintendent. I'll also be focusing in on leadership and governance as well. It's important for us to work closely together, establishing clear working norms and expectations among not only myself, but also you all as the board and the executive leadership team to ensure productive student-focused relationships are being presented to the overall community. That's extremely important. What we do as a team of 15 is projected to a larger audience. And we have to have the self-awareness to ensure that what we see is what they see. I'll also be focused on engagement as well, building support for students by engaging school communities, employees, community members to learn about their values, their priorities, and needs, experiences. One of the things that I've asked a majority of board members, and I had this conversation with Board Chair Mickens Murray, is, you know, what you truly value, you know, what drives you. And you guys have given me some insight, and I've jotted down all the answers. And we're doing that in the community as well to gain as much insight around what it is that you're passionate about. And the fourth thing is really operations and finance. Every time I have transitioned into a school district, I've taken it upon myself to explore opportunities for innovation and collaboration towards the greater effectiveness and efficiency across the school district's operations. If there are ways for us to operate more efficiently, we want to find them. This by no means is an exhaustive list, but I want to share with you, some key actions in line with this entry plan as well. And again, I'll send this information to you guys so you'll have it. Student achievement, of course, growth and support. I've got to analyze the data. I've got to meet with educators and school leaders to learn about their experiences. I must review professional development plans and resources to support continuous learning among staff. I've got to hold focus groups with meetings, time with principals and teachers and students around leadership governance, as I mentioned earlier. I've got to ensure that there's an opportunity to jointly facilitate a Board of Education retreat. This is great, but I need some significant time with you as a team so that we can really get down to as my father used to say, the nitty gritty around us continuing to get better as a group. We've got to create opportunities for joint engagement in the community. I know many of you all are doing it already, but I want to be there with you as well. I want to also collaborate with the board on the formal evaluation process. I've had conversations with our board chair around that in terms of procedures, timelines, and goals. But I want to collaborate with you all in doing so. And then lastly, around leadership and governance, I want to make sure that I review roles and responsibilities among executive leadership team, that prioritize support for students and school-based staff. One of the things that Quincy Boyd, my chief of staff, and I are working on currently is a set of board operating procedures. It's something that doesn't exist, but a good organization has these kinds of things in place to allow and be able to refer to when needed. Now, speaking just briefly, my last couple areas, I just want to touch on engagement a little bit. I want to visit as many schools as possible. I will take every Wednesday, probably between 8 o'clock and 1 o'clock, and I'll be visiting schools. And it's important for me to have those conversations with administrators, teachers, students, to really get the connection made around what it is that we want to focus on. My hope and expectation is to hold 5 community listening and learning sessions this coming fall, including 3 in-person forums and then a virtual forum on top of that, and then gathering for a Spanish-speaking forum for families as well. Now, I don't speak in Spanish, but we're gonna make sure that we have the necessary supports in place where our Spanish-speaking families feel engaged as well. I also want to meet key stakeholders, including parents, different organizations, civic groups, to make sure that we hear from all of those associations also. Faith-based leaders, higher education, business, the philanthropic partners. There's so many different people that it's important for me to engage with. I want to host introductory meetings, which I've started already with newsroom leaders, editorial boards, members of this news community that can help us accurately communicate our goals and where we're going as an organization. I also want to survey employees, students, and families on their experiences around the school district. And then lastly, as I mentioned, around operations and finance, it's going to be about reviewing departmental organizational structures to ensure support for schools and students. It's also going to be about meeting with budget and finance, human resources, facilities, operations, all of the different aspects of the organization to make sure that we're operating in an efficient manner. When I left my last school district, one of the first things I did when I came in is if there were particular areas of the organization that had saw inefficiencies, I ordered audits. And these were outside audits to really take a close look at. Not sure if I'll do that, but I'll be reviewing to see if that actually needs to happen or not. I'll also be taking a close look at transportation, procurement, legal counsel, and communications. I'll be reviewing budget projections. We already have an approved budget, financial documents, grants, audits, ESSER funding, a little bit of everything to ensure that we cover the gamut. And then lastly, I want to evaluate our safety processes. I've heard this from you all, the different processes and the policies and procedures that go along with those processes to really determine whether we're adequately investing money in the areas that we want to focus on. So I've taken 10 minutes to kind of give you guys a snapshot of what I will be focusing on. And when we have the actual entire 90-day document, I will share it with you all first before we get it out to the communities. But this is just a breakdown of what I will be focusing on in terms of the 90-day plan. But more than anything, I look forward to working with you all, ensuring that we move forward as a district, as a team of 15, to get this work done in the manner that you want and that you expect.
Thank you so much, Superintendent House. One of the reasons that I wanted to have this session was so that we could communicate to the public that we are a collaborative board and that we are willing to work with our superintendent to do the work that we need to do on behalf of our 131,000 students and our approximately 20,000 employees. What you have demonstrated just now in your 10 minutes is how willing you are to share information, not only with the board, but also with the community. So for that, I appreciate you and I applaud you. Now, because I did not know what your schedule was for tonight, you are free to remain, to stay, and to contribute. like I said, we're not going to do any specifics in your evaluation or ours, because the goal is to eventually have an accountability plan for us as board members. But with the help of Mr. Marty Schaefer and Mr. Darren Kinley, we're starting that work and starting to understand the process and trying to communicate that to the community. So if you choose to stay, you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to
I appreciate it.
And share.
I'm gonna stay in the background. I actually have a call that I'm about to jump on, but I'm gonna hop off of camera, hop off the speaker as well, but keep you guys in the background. We are working on the board operating manual. I've got a team that's gonna be focused on it this evening, but I will be listening.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Okay,
all.
with that said, I will now yield the floor to the facilitators to lead the discussion on the items that we have for this evening. So Marty, I will turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Board Chair. And what a great opportunity to hear from your new superintendent. And it was interesting because the things that he shared were in really significant alignment to that work, which we've already begun. And so the process that I see is a great opportunity for the board work to really be in alignment with what the superintendent's seeking to put into place. As we've acknowledged in the work up to this point, what we want to do is learn how to be a cohesive team. And so one of the things that we had shared is we did the background work on what it really means to have a clarity of the roles between what the board's going to be able to do and what the superintendent. And then the goal is to make sure that those efforts are not only understood, but they're mutually supportive. And I certainly heard that in Superintendent Millard House information that he shared with us tonight as well. And then I also want to acknowledge that we have the opportunity to kind of circle back a little bit on some of the information that has gotten us this far. But tonight, really, when we talk about knowing how to evaluate one another, when we hear that there's a board manual or standard operating procedures, those things are significant. And we really do need to make sure that you as a board feel great about what you're putting into motion. And so that we're building this together. So this is an opportunity to really look at what the structure could be. And so tonight, if we had a good meeting, we would have said at the end that we really do have an opportunity to align our goals between the superintendent and the board, and also knowing how to evaluate them in such a way that they're mutually supportive. So if we can go to that next slide, we'll kind of get an idea of how we believe we're going to get there. So with the time that we have, we want to again review a little bit of what does it mean to have an accountability plan, and what is the portion that the board and the superintendent can be expected to fulfill. And then we're going to, we've already had the opportunity to get to do number 2, which was kind of just hearing some of the expectations. And again, Superintendent House, it was wonderful to hear what you said, because not only did you share with great clarity, but there was certainly a lot of heart behind it. So just thank you for the things that you acknowledge. We'll circle back on that a little bit later tonight as well. And of course, give you an invitation opportunity to contribute more, however you'd like to share in that area. And then number 3, we're going to just look at, if you had an accountability plan, you've really got to be able to understand as a board, and we've talked about this, what are the most important initiatives that you see? And what was interesting is that we have Darren Kinley, who lives in your area. As he said, he is a product of your school district. And we also have the opportunity to look at it and to say, your superintendent is working very hard. You can tell that he's very intentional about meeting with schools, the community, and he's broken that down on how he's going to do that. And so you as the board have that also primary opportunity to be able to share from your lens who your community is, and also how it is that you're going to represent your community on behalf of the children and students that are in the district. So that's what we're looking at doing tonight. We're going to move forward to the next slide and start rolling up our sleeves and getting to work. Remember, we always want to start with this concept. It's a great question. And do we really know what a great board looks like and the impact it could have on our students, the district, and our community? We begin there, we really end there as well. And so we know there's a lot of dynamics going on. We've spoken on these, and you have a new dynamic in the fact that you have a brand new superintendent as well. And so with the new superintendent, of course, comes new experience and expertise, new team opportunities. So there's so much there to draw from. But at the same time, we have to remember that there's some time that it takes to walk through what we would call change management. Change management tells us that in that first year, it's imperative that we as a board understand that the superintendent's going to come in and really need to be able to understand the landscape, which is exactly what he shared he was going to do. And so as he has that as a priority, we also want to make sure that we as a board build a priority to help facilitate that. And so the whirlwind that we often face that is just out there in terms of just some of the difficulties that all school districts face right now, you have the extra kind of opportunity and maybe possibility of slowing down a little bit to speed up in the long run, which is really leaning into having a understanding of your superintendent, where he's going and how you can support him. So that's what we're going to look at specifically tonight. Next slide. We said that if you want to be a great board, it's going to have an opportunity for you as a board. I loved, the team of 15. That just really resonates. You have some new board members. You have student board members. Your voice and your ability to really represent your community is far-reaching in its scope. But it'll only be as impactful as the board has trust, one with another, one with the district, and of course, one with the community. So I just want to have us talk for a little bit on this concept of trust, and remembering that what we're saying is that your job as a board member, when it comes right down to it, is to create trust between the educational professionals, this school district under the leadership of your new superintendent, and the community. That's your primary responsibility. So if we look at that, then the question becomes, how will you do that? How will you as a board be able to create trust in your community so that they have confidence in the school district to be able to set their students up for success in life? So I'm going to invite you folks to go on chat or share a few minutes on that. So I'd love to hear what you believe is a way that you can move trust forward.
And board members, I will also recognize the show of the hands if you want to speak. Okay, well, I will start as chair of the board. I think one important thing for each of us to do is to model trust in our behavior, in our communication, and our interaction with each other. I think you give respect to get respect. And I think as long as we are, I think our goal is to speak with one voice, but to understand what that voice is and to come collectively around an idea, to understand what it is that we want to do for 131,000 children, even if it's around math, if it's around improving their reading skills, if it's improving the communication with the parents, if it's improving tutoring. I think it's important for us to have the discussions collectively instead of going off in silos, trying to do one thing in one area, something else over here, and neglecting some very vulnerable children that might be in some underrepresented socioeconomic areas. So thank you, Madeline. Board member Madeline Slaselia.
I'm thinking as we work together, that something that's very important that I think that we have failed to do is to create opportunities for us to create community beyond the board meetings, so that we can learn what our passions are, what drives us. Our superintendent, when he met with us, at least when he met with me, he asked me that question. And it was really the first time anyone had asked me that question, and I've been in the board for a year. What drives me? What is my passion? And I think that although there's a lot of assumptions of what drives us and why we're here and what our platform is, it would be important for us to have opportunities to actually discuss them and get to know each other as individuals, so then we can formulate a plan on what, as a board, we want to focus on.
Okay, so
Thank you,
beyond
Madeline.
the board experience. Zipporah, Dr. Zipporah Miller.
Good evening. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah.
Great. I want to piggyback on what my colleague, Board Member Lasaya Frazier said in creating community. I think one of the things that we need to be intentional about is seeking to understand and then to be understood. I think that's the way it's said. And listening, and listening, not just hearing, but listening, because I believe when you speak about trust, for me, my belief is it starts with transparency. However, the way I view transparency may be different from the way my colleagues view it. And we need to understand how we see it so we can come to a consensus of how we would see it as one board rather than how we just see it as individuals.
Thank you. Anyone else? And Marty, Darren, jump in whenever you choose.
Jocelyn's hand is up, so we have her
Mhm.
speak, be great.
Thank you. I don't see his, okay, Josh? Josh. not
Thank
good.
you so much,
Jocelyn.
Jocelyn Rao.
Jocelyn, okay.
So it's important to establish clear communication channels in order to build trust, because if people are siloing and or not having respect, it's just really going to be hard just to all come together. So communication is key. And the social worker in me is saying to lead with love. That will allow for trust to take place. That's all I have to contribute at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Darren has done a lot of work with the speed of trust, and I'm interested to hear from his vantage point as well. I know one of the things that Franklin Covey teaches on how to increase trust is to deliver outcomes as well. And so when we're doing a few things and doing them very well, the community can trust us because we move those things forward, right? And so sometimes the outcomes that we achieve really do help create trust. And the more shared those desired outcomes are, usually the deeper level of trust that's going to come. Darren, do you have anything that you'd want to share to help support how to increase trust in a board?
Marty, no, not at this second.
Thank you, Darren. All right.
And I think also, Marty, as we move forward, I think creating community is what I heard from both the board members. So as we move forward and we talk, if we could keep that in our head, in our minds.
Yeah, it's interesting that, Judy, that we have that kind of in the parking lot, as you're saying, because your superintendent also said that he wanted to do a more deep dive retreat to where there really was that time to connect at a deep, significant level. And there's just no substitute for time together. There really isn't. If we want to be a cohesive team, you've got to connect, and then you've got to be able to, and Jocelyn, I just don't want you to feel bad. When you said love is a great thing. And so you're absolutely right. Sometimes we say we want to make sure that people know that they're loved and that they're understood. I heard that they're heard, that they're cared about. Those things really do. Data proves that those deepen our connections and that it really does deepen trust. And in fact, that it's been said that the best way to get trust is to give trust. And so when we begin a relationship where we really do care, love, and give and impart trust, it does deepen relationships. And is your hand still up, Jocelyn?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yes, thank you. I had additional thing when we were talking about building community And I heard this with our superintendent, Mr. House. He also shared this. In order to have trust, we need to be able to earn it. And we earn that through strengthening our partnerships. That's something that, for me, I want to really help with, because that was why I was selected to be here. But we can't do this by ourselves. We can't create trust amongst ourselves by ourselves. It's going to take strength in our relationships and our partnerships. We have the county council, they have a county executive, we have our municipal leaders, our municipal partners. Those are just to name a few that are going to be integral in order to gain the access and the trust of our community, Prince George's County. And so that's very important that we hone in on building and restructuring our relationships that may have been that may need to be repaired.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Marty?
Well, what's interesting is, Justin, you've just kind of done a very brief summary of our last meeting, because in our last meeting, we worked very hard to be able to say, without the real trust and a working relationship as a board, a cohesive team, how can the community really understand and appreciate, respect, and have confidence in the board, right? And the board is tied to the relationship with the superintendent. And so it's complicated. When it works well, it's amazing how well it works, because let's think about it. Each one of you have 15 of you that are able to create a different lens and help open up doors to new voice for your community as you're preparing strategies, or the superintendent and his team are preparing strategies to impact students for success and for life, right? And so when you're coming together and collaboratively problem solving, you're doing exactly what this community needs. And when the community sees you doing that, all of a sudden they start having confidence, right? They have confidence in the school district and the board. And so then we get to communicate well, because it's not always just, sometimes we have communication that's coming from the individuals in our communities, which are more along the lines of concerns, as opposed to the place where we like to be, which is gratitude, which is partnership, which is co-laboring with us. So that's where it's moving. And it does begin with a strong community as a board. And remember, when we say board, your board is a unique thing in that you have, elected and appointed board members, but you also have a superintendent. And when you put all of you together, that's the team. And so while the superintendent isn't an official voting member of the board, he's certainly part of the team, and that's how it all works together. So that's the structure that we're working on. So let's jump back to our slide. But if there's any area where somebody wants to share on trust, raise your hand, or any other comments, and we'll make sure that we hear them and that we listen. So the job, if we will just take it seriously, is that we are going to be able to help the community have confidence in the district. To do that, it's already been mentioned by a couple people of you in your things that you've shared, but you have to do that through one voice. And so if we're communicating 15 different voices, then that might create more confusion than it would confidence. And the only way I know in the way for us to build a cohesive team is to be able to have strong leadership with one voice. And so one voice means this, that each one of us knows that as a board member and or superintendent and district team, that at the core of what we're doing is a concern for students. The success of students is what really has caused us to be in the positions that we're in, whether we ran for the office, whether we got appointed, whether we're working for the district. It really comes down to the fact that we love students. We want to see them be successful. And so that's the core. But the way that we get to that is through really different areas of expertise and activities. So the board, you as a board, if you remember, you're part of the structure that you use as a team is that you allocate resources, and you're also creating policy, and you're evaluating, supporting the superintendent. Those are three of the main areas of which you're contributing to student success. And so your district is counting on you as a board to do those things with fidelity and to do them as a cohesive unit, as a team. The superintendent, remember, manages the schools, the district and the department. So the superintendent's responsible to do all the managing and the implementation. It's an extremely difficult job. And so the board has the opportunity to set the direction, to be able then to allocate the resources, but the board does not manage the district. The superintendent manages the district. The board has an opportunity to support and invest in and evaluate the superintendent. So we just want to make sure that we're clear on that, otherwise it doesn't work well. And then together, what you're doing as a board and superintendent team is that you're actually aligning the initiatives that the board has and that the superintendent sees as the strategies and the goals that are going to be necessary to move those initiatives forward. And then
Marty, I see Dr. Zipporah Miller's hand.
yeah, please go ahead and speak up, Zipporah.
Oh, no, Marty can, go ahead and finish your thought, because I was gonna ask, I had a thought around this slide.
All right. Well, then, and then what I just want to remind us of is that sometimes what happens is we as a board aren't completely together, that collective voice that you spoke of earlier. We're not completely together. What we would agree are the most important initiatives for our community and for our students, right? But when we know what those are, then we're able to to see the superintendent strategies and work plan, move those towards fruition. But if we can't communicate to our superintendent the most important initiatives that we believe are integral to the success of our students in our community, then that's usually where we need to begin. And so I just want to, remind us of that. Zipporah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. You actually stated the comment that I was thinking, because as I looked at that slide, and last year when you're with us during the summer, you and Darren talked about how, we have 9 different districts. I know there's 15 of us on the team, but we have 9 different districts, and each of us, as we go and look at the needs of our different districts individually, and you began the conversation today about trust. I just, wanted to just say, that this is the reason we have an urgency to develop trust, because while we are looking at what our district needs are, the superintendent is looking at it from all 9 districts, and no child can be left behind. So we need to be able to have open and honest conversations to figure out what are the true priorities, so that every child in every district is gaining what they need in order to be successful in their tenure, in their K-12 tenure in our school district. And we really, I wanted to say that the urgency for trust has to be there, because it can't be just it needs to be, okay, I am focused on District 5 because I represent District 5, but I also need to hear my other colleagues so I can ensure that the students in District 5 are well served, as well as the students in the entire Prince George's County.
What a beautiful thing, Zipporah, when we can go back to District 5 and we can say, you know what, District 9's been heard, District 8's been heard, we've heard from each, we care about each, we love each, we're aware, we're moving the needs of each forward as best as we can. And when we can say that, that's when the community starts having confidence in us as well. When it's not, we don't want districts competing with each other. We want them to be able to complete each other, and that even our own districts need to know that they can have confidence that they've been heard. And I, again, just really appreciate that you could hear that in your new superintendent's comments that he shared earlier today. I'd love to hear more from the rest of you just on your concept of how it is that you really do believe that you can come together, be able to hear each, and then move to building something significant for every. And then how is it that we're going to communicate that back to our districts, right? That their voice has been heard and that we're moving the most important initiatives forward. Can we give voice to what those initiatives are? Have we as a board built that collectively is my question.
One thing that I'd like to Many of our district board members, they have newsletters and they have meetings once a month, you know, with their constituents. I am sure, and because I'm an appointed member at large, I don't specifically look at one area, but I am sure that there are some efficiencies and there are also some challenges in all of these districts that may look the same or may not look the same. But we need to share that information with each other so that we can start looking at what are some of the strategies that we can put in place to attack some of those things that need to be fixed and to duplicate some of those things that are being done well. So I think if we figure out a way to communicate more amongst ourselves about what is currently happening, and then as the superintendent identifies those goals for us, or as we identify the collective goals for us, the board and the superintendent, then we can start to drill down on some of those things that we need to enhance, or some of those things that we need to fix.
Thank you. And
Maddie? Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead, Maddie.
As I'm listening to you, Judy, and I don't want to move to solutions right away because that's not efficient. But one thing that came up when you were talking is the idea of unified voice versus having all these multiple voices in our in our board, and how wonderful it would be if we could have one newsletter or one mechanism where we put all our information together in one place, and how wonderful it would be that we share all the common information in one space, and then there's spaces for District 1 to talk about anything special that they want to shout out or kudos to our student community, something that they're doing that's wonderful. Because then that moves us forward as a unified board, one voice, we're sharing the same information, and it doesn't feel like there is a competition of sorts.
Very good, thank you. John, Board Member Briggs?
Yeah, I feel obliged to share. So apologies for not talking at this point, but I would just say I'm thinking about this as a process map, and also want to say that there's background noise, so hopefully my voice isn't drowned out. But you know, I think like there's the district-wide goal that we have, right? It's all of our schools in the district, the 133 schools, and then all of the, or sorry, yeah, the 133 schools, 200 plus schools.
200 plus schools, right?
Yeah, and the 133,000 students. And you know, I think that if we can collectively understand what, you know, our superintendent's goals are, and they're aligned to the board, and we are in partnership there, then I think that applies to our individual districts, right? You know, when you have a principal or a community member or a parent come to you and ask a question, we really can, I think, one, get buy-in from, you know, those folks who may say, well, why are we doing this? And why is this happening this way? If we deeply understand that as board members, we really in some capacity are communicators on behalf of the kind of collective goal that we have. And so it's really important for us to, one, be bought into the goals. I think two, then disseminate that information to our constituents to really get them bought into them. And then I think really champion ideas, you know, if there are parent groups or there are others who have specific things that they'd like to accomplish, we can make sure that those goals are aligned to where our district is trying to go. So I think that the more that we're aligned, I think the more that people feel bought in, they trust the system, they understand, you know, why we're doing and making decisions that we make. And I think that just creates a more effective outcome for our students. When we think about kind of students being in the center of all that, when we're all aligned, not just the board, but kind of the broader, you know, everyone, then I think that's more effective for all of us.
Thank you so much. I thought I saw Board Member Sheila Adams Stafford, but maybe not. Okay, Marty, go back to you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm
I wasn't
sorry.
sure my hand was up. It
I
was
saw it.
up for a moment. Yes, so I just wanted to first just share, I'm in agreement with Board Member Lasai's Frazier's suggestion around a board newsletter for several reasons. I think it puts a bit of a strain on our staff to create several newsletters for all of us, because some of them are working with several board members at once. And I think that a streamlined newsletter also will help send a unified message to not only just, families and students, but also to like our our um our statewide delegation, about our county delegation, really about what we're doing as a board and helping us to, just share some of the work that we're doing internally. Which also brings me to something that I've shared over the last couple of years about the board having someone on staff that solely focuses on communication, or some type of communication plan for the board in terms of how we represent ourselves externally. Someone that could help manage like our social media, or help us to share some of the initiatives that we're working on with the broader community. And so I think that would certainly be a position that I think could benefit us greatly, as we think about forging a more unified voice. Thank you.
Thank you. Our student board member, Rain Riviera Forbes.
Thank you. Sharing my viewpoint as well, I do think a joint newsletter would do well for our county, especially with helping students have access to that communication, as many board members have stated. It's awesome when we are being active in our community, but it's even more awesome when we're giving students an easy way to access that information as well, so they feel that they're involved and know that they have a seat at this table. So I think that would be awesome, because that way we're really able to communicate to the ones that we're serving and the ones that we're here for.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments before we go back to Marty? Okay, Marty.
Thank you. Just really enjoying the comments. So thank you, board, for sharing. We'll go to the slide that says organizational trust now. So we're talking about trust. What I want to remind us of is, let's go to the next slide. So one voice is significant, but here's the bottom line for us. It's not just how well we communicate. How well we communicate is important, and there's different strategies that we certainly would want to look at, being as inclusive and far-reaching our scope as we can. But what we communicate, right, is extremely important. And you as a board, as you come together and as you represent your communities and you represent student voice and you represent the needs and the opportunities, that voice becomes very important. But what we want to be able to do is to bring clarity to what it is that you as a board are doing in agreement with moving students forward in your communities, right? And so what we communicate is also significant. And you as a board, as you're looking at your own board evaluations, you need to be able to say, we're moving the right things forward. Just like you want to be able to look at the superintendent's, work plan and be able to say the goals, the strategies, the things that he's moving forward are significant in being able to impact student success. So I always want to remind us as a board, do you really have a clarity around the things that are the most significant to your 200 plus schools, your 133,000 students? What's that compelling initiative that you as a board are moving forward on their behalf, right? So that what is going to be important. We'll come back to that later. And now I just want to talk about the structures that you already started beginning with that carry the voice forward. And so what you'll see here is, and we looked at this very briefly, but organizational trust is significant. And what we said that when our communities look at our school districts, their perceptions either start creating a lens by which they trust or maybe don't trust us, right? And so then we as board members, we represent our community. So we have an opportunity to increase the community's trust and confidence in the school district. That's really what we're trying to achieve. Why? Because we have the right initiatives moving forward and we have the right superintendent and strategies and work plans in place. So when we look at it's not always the past performance that's the most important. The past performance will get us to the point where people have opinions about us. But our current performance is going to be either creating momentum or it's going to cause us to lose momentum. And so that's that significant part where we as a board are going to want to be very cohesive. You want clarity and really connected together as a team. And again, when I say the board, when I use the word team, we're talking about the superintendent and the board, right?
Right.
That's the board team. And then the anticipated performance. Friends, this is where the community has expectations. And tonight we're doing something very wise. We're looking at what is the superintendent's expectations of coming into this new school district. What does he believe he can accomplish? How's he going to go about it? I love, when you say that you're going to listen and learn to lead, you're already moving in Franklin Covey's definition. That's the highest level of trust building right there. So Superintendent House, you get an A+ with that incredible insight. That is definitely what we can tell you in change management is the most significant way to increase an organization's effectiveness. But what our part is that we've got to have clear expectations. So our expectations as a board is that we will be collaborative problem solvers. We're going to come, excuse me, we're going to come together to develop that collective voice that's in the best interest of our students. That's what we do. And what that means is if you'll just look at that first column where it says me, that's you as an individual board member. Remember, you're always going to be seen as a board member. Therefore, your goal is to solidify the trust between the board team. You got to have that there and the community. So that means we're going to work collaboratively. And when the community sees us collaborating together, they're going to be able to share more because they're going to have more confidence in what they share's heard and that it's actually going to create an outcome. Your board team, then remember that your superintendent is the face of the district. That's just how it works. But you as a board are the one voice behind that face. And that's the power of being able to see Superintendent House be successful on a fast track or, with a little bit more effort. We want to come together to really support him so that the work is going to be as effective as possible. And when we talk about effectiveness, we say it like this: connectedness equates to effectiveness. The more connected you are as a board, the more connected you are to your community, the more connected you are to your superintendent, the more connected you are to building the partnerships in your community, the more your one voice is going to have that powerful impact. So that's what we're looking for. I also want to acknowledge what Raina Riviera Forbes, your student board member, shared is really impacting. That when students feel that they have a voice at a seat at the table, then that is a significant way to be able to create trust with them as well. They'll feel that you're relevant because they know that you care, that you're listening, that you're including them. So great job on doing that, because not all boards really take student voice seriously, and your board has. So fantastic. So then the district in this, when the organization looks at you as an individual, they're still seeing the board. When the individuals look at the board team, they're seeing the district. So you can't separate yourself from your stakeholders, friends. You've got to come together on behalf of your students and your community, because that's their expectation of you. They see a board member, they see the district. We want to do well so that those who see the way that we interact together and on behalf of students gives them confidence. Any feedback on that? Because this is mission critical that we see it that way. Next slide. And if you raise your hand, we'll be able to make sure I see, because I can only see a column of people, but if you raise your hand, then I'm able to make sure that Judy and I can see you and call on you, because we want your insights. So this is what we're going to do. We as a board will be that cohesive team. The superintendent will be the face of the district. We're going to create one voice. We're going to move the right initiatives forward, and then we're going to make progress. That's what happens. And then we're going to hit barriers. And what we're going to do is we're going to come together as a team, and we're going to solve how it is that we can overcome the barriers on behalf of students. That sounds great on paper, but it's really hard work. The way you've got to have the right structures in place to do it. And so here's our structures, friends. You've got to have that clarity around the board and superintendent roles. We've already talked on that. Who manages the board? The only way that this can work is if you have a board chair who manages the board. The superintendent cannot manage the board because the superintendent is tasked with managing the district. Be a great board. Manage yourselves in such a way that you build a cohesive team with the superintendent as the face, and all 15 of you, a team of 15, have one voice. You will be a powerful entity that will increase the level of confidence in your community and students. Number two is you've got to have a shared vision around student success. Whether you're District 1 or District 9, you need to know what student success looks like for each and every one of those. You've got to hear the voice of each, but you have to build it for every, and that's really hard work. So that's co-constructing a narrative with one voice. Your superintendent can have 14 different bosses. He's got to have one, and you as a board can't try to do everything. You've got to do a few things very well. And then, Judy, this is where we're really going tonight, is that once you understand that, now you have an opportunity to build accountability plan around these most important initiatives and the structure that's going to make them work. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. We're not going to be getting in the weeds and saying you need to do this or you need to do that, or here's it, but we're saying the structure has to be in place. And so when you build the structure, you have what's called look-fors. And these are some of the things that you're going to want to be able to say. If you are an effective board, then most likely you're going to see these particular things, the structure and these interactions taking place. And can I just tell you?
And Marty,
yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but one of the things that's also important is that we as board members understand that we have to be accountable too. It's not just the superintendent. I think sometimes some school systems feel that all the weight is on the superintendent, but that weight is shared. That weight is on the superintendent and is shared with the board. And it's not that we play a blame game or we do a I gotcha game. If we do collective goal setting, which is what I hope you lead us towards, at least in 2 or 3 areas, then we help the superintendent to accomplish some stuff. It's not that we do the work, it's that we identify some of the resources or whatever those other things that he may need that he doesn't have the time to do because he's busy running a district. So he sends us off to do it.
Well, he's already said that, yeah, he's already said he's going to want to move into the community with you. I heard him say that very clearly. So those are some areas where you'll probably find some mutual alignment that you'll want to do. But Judy, you're right. An accountability plan isn't we gotcha. An accountability plan is that we're mutually supporting one another to move the right initiatives forward. Jonathan, go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to backtrack and just recognize Rain for her student board member Rain for her comment, because I think that I feel like this is probably implied in all of the trainings that we're receiving here, which is that this really isn't just a top-down approach, but it can be a bi-vertical, right? So it's like it can be us from the superintendent down to the students up. And I think if this was like a visual, it's like a slope, and you got the teachers pulling the students along on a heavy cart. But if you have students behind the cart pushing it and helping out because they're bought in, they feel supported, they feel excited, then we really can have those outcomes. And I think it really can be a truly student-centered approach. So I think that just kind of recognizing Rain for that, because I think that when students are bought in, there's a lot of research that backs that we get better results and they're more, engaged.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Jocelyn.
Jocelyn.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also think equally, thank you for saying that, Board Member Briggs, because I equally feel that we need to figure out how we elevate the voice of all of our parents as well. I think parents, they really want our students, all students, to do well. And if they know that their child is being heard, they know that the educators that are working with their children are being heard, they will roll up their sleeves and do everything they can to support their students. And so that is another thing that it's not only, and somebody said this, don't want to give the wrong person credit, so I'm going to say somebody. continue to make community, right? And normalize community, normalize the village. Because what Board Member Briggs said is we all have a piece to play in success. And it's not going to solely rely on the superintendent.
That's right.
It's not going to be the board waving a magic wand. It's going to take the students, the parents, our community,
Right.
and it's a true community. And how we do that, that's what you're here for. You to help us figure that out. Back over to you.
Well, Jocelyn, what's interesting is that of course, we work with school districts across the United States, Canada, and even in other countries now. And what's interesting, going on with what you said, several of the school districts now, for their Now initiative, what the boards are doing, is saying that one of the most important things we can do right now is elevate voice. And when they say elevate voice, they say student voice and community voice.
That's right.
And so that's really become the two number one Now initiatives that we're hearing from communities that they want their districts to be really successful at. In other words, what the community said, if you did this for me, school district or board, you'd be helping me. They said elevating voice and keeping kids safe. Those are the two things we hear the most. Brandon, I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Hey, Marty, how's it going?
Doing well. Good to hear your voice tonight. Thank you.
Likewise. So I actually have a question for you in regards to community. So I think a lot of the board members have hit on community. I look at community as the different, I guess, stakeholders or partners inside of, that's impacted by our education in general, right? But education system in general. But I think there's another layer, called culture. And culture is so important. And I'm just, example is I'm looking at, post-COVID, how a lot of, especially in the private sector, a lot of companies moved, to a lot of virtual work, right? A lot of people were working from home, and productivity has increased in a lot of different entities, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that's happening now, you're starting to see a lot of CEOs, bring employees back in office, 1 or 2 days a week, not because the productivity struggles, because it's a breakdown in culture of the company that's been established, over, a lot of years. And it's not that as individuals, they can't be productive, but I think what the customer, or in our case, the constituent, expects is a level of consistency, the way we do things, the way we handle things, like the expectation that you get from, District 1 through 9, or any board member that you deal with. There's a unified approach, and there's an expectation, playing on the analogy or the example of the private sector, that you expect a certain level of service that you get in your respective district. And so my question to you is, how do we reestablish a culture that's kind of gotten away from us? And I think by default that becomes our culture, because it's been all over the place. So how do we kind of rein that thing in and bring a new culture to PGCPS?
And Brandon, I saw it because some of us are on with our video and some of us are on with just our names. But I want you to know, I felt other people nodding their heads and they could appreciate what you're saying. Thank you for bringing up culture. And to your point, you can create new structures, but if there isn't, at the heart of it, it's going to need to be a culture that is relevant. And relevancy is everything. And so people know the difference between asking us to go through the motions or maintaining status quo. And what I'm wanting to see boards do is things that are very impactful and meaningful and purposeful. That's why we signed up. I mean, that's why we got on these boards. That's why we got into education, because we actually want to set students up for success in life. And so there's going to have to be a culture. And I believe that the new culture that's being created, that we can help create, is indeed a culture that says we hear you, that we see you, we hear you, and that we're going to do something together that is more significant and impactful than what's been done up to this point, right? And so that's a culture of collaboration. That's a culture of problem solving. That's a culture of collective voice. And I think that the more a board can tap into that and not only agree with it, but then move to some specific things that cause it to move forward, you're going to be very relevant. And I look forward to seeing you as a board say, hey, here's the 2 to 3 most important things we can do to help create this new culture to move these things forward. And then I'm going to ask you, Brandon, if you wanted just to comment to that to make sure I answered it well enough.
Yeah, I do. I definitely appreciate that answer. And I would just add that one of the things that we'll have to figure out a way to do. Why I feel like this is really the foundation for everything, and I think we kind of touched on this in the session that we had, a few months ago. Is, along with culture, like, how do we establish that baseline of vulnerability? Because you can't love if you're not vulnerable. You can't learn if you're not vulnerable. Like, you can't establish anything without vulnerability, because that opens you up to receive information and to also put out information. So it's like, how do you kind of establish that baseline, especially when our environment, hasn't been a place where, you can be vulnerable, or our culture hasn't been a vulnerable
Right.
place. So,
And Brandon, what's so interesting is that you're stating something very significant. So what's happening is people are feeling more vulnerable, and their confidence in institutions is more fragile. And so that's not moving the right things forward, right? So that's a lot of the landscape that we're seeing. So when we come in, and what we're wanting to do is to create confidence in the specific institution, the direction, the entity of your school district. And if you'll remember, one of the things that we shared, the number one thing that we ask you to do as a board to create this new culture is to model it. And your board chair, Gene McIntyre, already even shared that earlier. But remember what we were going to model? It doesn't sound very fun, perhaps, or maybe it doesn't even sound that complicated, but we said we will be teachable and correctable. We as a board would be teachable and correctable. And when we have that, now we can create a collective voice. Now we can create momentum to be able to build the new culture. And then Jocelyn, I see your hand up. Did you want to share a comment?
Piggybacking on board member Jackson's comment, in order for vulnerability to take place, there has to be safety, psychological safety, right? We have to be able to have that trust. I don't want to drag us all the way back, but
It's okay.
we're going to step back for a little bit. The trust has to, if people are not feeling well inside, they're not going to hear or see the change, right? So we have to, so I'm such a fan of Carter. So I'm so glad you talked about change management. Ooh, when I heard you say that, I was like, yes. We have to be able to, that's step one. We have to be able to say, okay, let's pour it all out on the table, right? And so we have to understand that it may be some hard conversations, but we have to trust each other that we're going to get there through a plan, through action, through bringing people along.
And our individual part of that, Jocelyn, is to say, I will be teachable and correctable. I want to learn with you. Your superintendent couldn't have said it any better. It's literally A+. I'm willing to listen and learn before I lead. In fact, my leadership's going to come out of listening and learning. And oh, by the way, what real leading is setting others up for success. That's what leaders do. They create leaders. And so it really does have to begin there. But we have something we can do right now. We can say, I'm going to be open, and I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, And we're going to call that leadership. That's that culture that Brandon is pushing us towards. And I love it. And Brandon, we heard you during the meeting too, because you were encouraging us to move in that area. Each one of you as board members were bringing some very right perspective and heart to this team. And that's what gives us that, that desire to really make it work. So you got to be a cohesive team to move these initiatives forward. Let's look back at it again. So we looked at organizational trust. We all have it. We looked at the fact that we've got these 4 things. So would you bring up the 4 things slide again? Because we talked about accountability aligned to initiatives. So what we're doing is the community wants to know that we're doing the things that are going to set up their children for success. That's what your community is looking at. And you're going to have to hear the voice from the students, just like Rain said and others, of what success means to them, so that there's that opportunity to really make sure that you're building the things that are the most impacting for each voice that you have, but at the same time, you have to move it forward for every. You're going to look at the things that you can do right now. There's going to be a million things that you might be able to do, but as Judy said, you're going to do 2 to 3 things. You're going to do them very well. That's going to be your focus. And that you're going to build an accountability plan of how it is that you will move those most important things forward. In that, what I wanted to share is that the best community engagement comes out of hearing their voice and their concerns, and then having them also not only feel heard, but seeing what their part is to be able to help see the district and their community be successful. So what we want to do is we want to not just increase the community's confidence in the district, but we want the community to be able to see when I do this, it brings value not only to my child, but to my school and my community, right? So that's the 4 things that we're looking at. We talk about community engagement, but you've got to have the clarity, the shared vision and accountability plan around and working well. Otherwise, sometimes what happens when you reach out to the community is that you end up having a lot of damage control to do versus really building the partnerships that you want. If you know who you are, you know where you're going, you can ensure that you're working on the right initiatives and you're looking for progress through these 3 ways, your community is going to really know how to align with you, just like you're going to know how to align with your superintendent's goals, just like your superintendent's going to know how to align with your initiatives. Next slide. So our impact question is going to come down to this. When you have a first year expectation of the superintendent, what is it that you're going to be looking for so that you know that you're able to support your superintendent? So he's going to send out the plan. He's been very succinct. I loved how accurate he was in the 8 to 10 minutes. He knows who he is and he knows where he's going. And so he's going to be asking for support. I heard that also from you as a board. So what we want to be able to do is when you interact and you see more of the plan, we're going to want to come back and say, what are some of the things that we feel that we really can bring support to him that will empower him to be able to make the progress that he's trying to make in those areas, right?
Right.
So for that to happen, the warning signal, so now this is where I go, warning, warning, folks. What we don't want to do is to say, oh, and by the way, superintendent, we want you to do this, 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 and this, because usually this, and this is below the line. It's telling them how to manage. We don't want to tell them that. We want to be able to say the most important initiatives we believe in our community are. So how are you going to build it to be able to see these initiatives go forward? Because we as a board are building initiatives. You as a superintendent are literally doing strategies, activities, and goals. And we want to find how we can support you. That's the alignment, right, JD, that we had talked about.
Right.
But if we can't tell your superintendent told you where he's going, you as a board need to be able to tell the superintendent, and here's the initiatives we believe are the most important. And you might not be able to tell them right now this minute because you as a board are new. You have some new board members, but this is the important work of the board coming together. That's why we do these retreats, to find out what those most significant now initiatives are. But remember, there's a difference between vision, direction, and management. Vision is shared. The superintendent, the board, you're carrying the same vision, right?
Right.
Direction is what a board gives. Hey, we believe we need to move our community in this direction. All of the management is incumbent
Yeah.
on the superintendent.
Right.
I just want to make sure we all agree with that before we move on. Otherwise, there's going to be hurt feelings somewhere down the road.
Any comments from board members?
Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Just a helpful maybe visualization illustration that you might appreciate, Marty, was I was thinking the vision is where you want to go. The direction is the GPS of how we're going to get there, right? The directions turn by turn. Yep. And then the person who's steering the car is in the driver's seat, right? So we are, so hopefully that helps people to just think through that, keep that.
Jonathan, not only do I love that, but I could see, can you imagine if everybody's in the back seat saying, no, go here, go there, changing their minds, or grabbing the steering wheel. That's not a vehicle I want to be in.
Yeah, but I'll do one better. Jonathan, you need to give us a visual. You need to create that so that we can carry it in a wallet or something, a picture.
Yeah, we don't want 13 hands or 26 hands on that steering wheel. We really don't.
Right.
Thank you. And so now what we're going to look at, the question is, then I just want to ask you as a board, we're going to take a few minutes and ask some questions, but the question is, what specific ways do you believe right now that you can support the superintendent in his new endeavors here into your beautiful community? How can you support him? What's it going to look like in this 90-day plan from your perspective?
Jocelyn, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's for me in my role is being a connector, championing the concerns of everyone, especially the county council and their perspectives, just being a connector, liaising between the two. That is how I foresee giving our superintendent what he's going to need.
Thank you. I see 3 hands up. I'll tell you in the order. Board Member LaSalia first, Board Member Dr. Zipporah Miller second, and Board Member Rain Rivera Forbes third.
Thank you, Chair. For me, it's starting with connecting him to my district, and making sure that I'm there as a cheerleader for him, but also an advocate in listening to what he has to say, his vision, his mission, and then being able to share it with the community. Already wanting to have a meet and greet with the community as they set it up, because I want right from the beginning for him to be able to, for the community to see us together and that we're one, we're a team, like he mentioned. So that to me is very important.
Good. Okay, Dr. Zipporah Miller.
I was just going to say the exact same thing that Board Member LaSalle Frazier said, exact same thing. I see myself in supporting the superintendent is ensuring that and I know he's doing his listening and learning tours, but we are connected to our districts and we hear the voices of our districts. So the communication going both ways, communicating with him the needs of the districts, the nitty-gritty needs, the global needs, and then the smaller needs, but also going back to the district and communicating how his overall goals for the school system, how they're aligned with or are addressing the needs for the district. So consistent communication, open communication, and transparency.
Thank you, Board Member Rain Rivera Forbes.
Thank you. For myself as a student member of the board, really ensuring that I can provide my support is giving the student viewpoint, connecting our superintendent with our students. That's a very big priority for me. So our students can know that, like I said earlier, that their seat is here at the table, but that they also have a direct line of communication to the adults that are representing them, along with, a direct line of communication with me as well with those adults. I think that's very important. And that's something that I would like to work on with our superintendent.
Thank you. And seeing no other hands, my my role in helping, from my perspective, to help our superintendent is because of my experience in this county, to ensure that he speaks not only to advocates, but also adversaries. He has to understand both sides of the issue. And we have many folks in Prince George's County who have different opinions. But as long as as long as he's aware of that, I think it will go a long way to helping him navigate positively within our community.
Brandon's hand is up as well, Judy.
Brandon?
Yes, thank you. I guess my role would be to not only to assist in those efforts that everyone else spoke so eloquently about, but also make sure that we are inclusive in our approach and our vision. I have a very sharp focus on the streets, economically challenged, disadvantaged, economically disadvantaged students throughout the county. Of course, District 6 specifically, because that's the district I represent, but being a person from that type of environment, I want to make sure that they're included and those families are included every step of the way. So I want to make sure that we can have a vision that's inclusive of them, and also make sure that we are able to reach them in their different challenges with communications, whether it's, because there is a digital divide, there is, a lot of different challenges that come with those communities. So I want to make sure that we have a message that's palatable for everybody and inclusive of everyone's interest as well.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, Marty, back to you.
Thank you. So board, what I'm hearing you say is very encouraging. So I'm going to give a little bit of a summary to it, because I heard a lot of connecting. I heard a lot of communicating. I heard a lot of championing, and those are extremely important. And in doing so, we also have to remember the kind of some of the things that Brandon was talking about earlier, that some of our communities, the cultures, in a new place or different place, or maybe some of our individuals even feel a little suspect of some of the things that's going on in life, right? And so in that, it's I think it's important for us to understand that not only can we help connect and then do a good job of disseminating information, but that we can also share with the individuals that we have a sphere of influence, the different stakeholders that we interact with, the fact that we as a board know who we are and we know where we're going, that we as a district are able to move the most important things forward as well, right? And remind them that it's difficult to get there, because as a board, you have 15 different lens by which you get to look through the life of your community. But through those lenses, you're coming together, you're looking at each, you're doing everything you can to hear the voice of each person. Ultimately, you're building a school district that serves the needs of not only each, but every at the same time. Now, however you say that, it helps sometimes when I'm a community member and there's a certain segment of life that's important to me that might not be as important to other people, right? And so I want to know that my concerns are being heard. I also want to be able to know that my concerns are part of the collective voice of the concerns of other people in my community too. And that when I'm successful, they're successful. When they're successful, that's what community is. So remember, we're building community. We're not just creating the connections. We want to do that, but in it, let's remind them that it's hard work to build a community. It is hard work and it's heart work. And that's why we're doing this. And then that sometimes helps open us up a little bit more in that area of trust. If we just talk about data sometimes, then trust will be in the outcomes that you provide. They'll be in the, but when you talk about trust with heart, now it's we're all humans and we're all in it together, and it moves more towards that village that was spoken of earlier. So I just want to remind you of that. You're absolutely right. Connect, champion, cheerlead, communicate. We've got a lot of right C words going on there, but they're accurate and they're true. With that, remind your community that it's hard work. It's just hard, and it's a collective process, and that it's going to take time. Most of the things that are very difficult to accomplish require that hard work, or they require team. So I just want to remind you that. Let's
You
go to
know,
our next. go
Marty,
ahead.
one thing I just thought of though is sometimes the superintendent is going to give parents and employees information. Sometimes they'll find themselves in difficult situations. I see our role sometimes is helping to communicate that once we understand it, to help him with the messaging to get it out. Because, you know, just putting an announcement together about something is one thing. But when you are one-on-one with someone at a grocery store, that's another thing. So I am just thinking, as we get to know our superintendent, as he gets to know us, as he shares information with us, we can be more transparent with the community as we understand what is going on in the district, or the path that he has taken us down. Sometimes we may not even like it, but if we understand it, we can defend it.
And we can share with our constituents that, hey, sometimes this is just hard work. Building a school structure for everyone is a lot harder than building it for a few people.
That's right.
And so we're all in this together. And so to be all in it together, that's what we call slowing down and speed up sometime. And if I understand, when a new superintendent comes in, you get to slow down a little bit to speed up, and that's where y'all are at.
Right. Thank you.
So let's go to our next slide, because it's not always enjoyable to see, but it's very accurate. We'd seen it before. Just that good reminder is that one of the fastest ways to erode confidence is through complaining. And so you know, you're going to be in the grocery store line, and guess what, Judy? We're going to hear people that always don't come up and say, thank you so much for the great job you're doing. They often come up and say, would you fire the athletic director? Or we don't like this person. So we as board get to help people move from complaining to sharing their voice, but also understanding the needs of the community. So just that reminder, and those are the strategies that you'll build. Next slide. So there's a difference between what we would call lead measures and lag measures. And Judy, this is where we're getting to the work of tonight. So when a superintendent says, I'm going to be seeking to engage the community, that's very much the right work. And it's clearly what a large portion of his first 90 days and first year will be. Again, I want to remind everybody that in change management, year one is what they call the honeymoon or the grace space, where the new organizational leader will come in and just be able to have a better and a clearer understanding of the needs of the organization, the needs of the community, what the landscape is, what could happen, what's currently going on. There's a lot to take in. So that's year one. Year two normally is when they start really solidifying some new team, building team, but the team now is positioned that they're really going to be moving initiatives forward. And then year three normally is when you implement change and it becomes sustainable and or systemic change, which is what usually takes about 3 years to get to that process. So you're going to want to be able to look at some of the things that are going to be necessary in this first year to create that opportunity for your superintendent to be able to engage the community, listen, as he shared, and have that space to be able to know that you see that as valuable, right? And so if you're saying, no, we need systemic change, year one, I'm just telling you as a person who works for Franklin Covey, you know, a world leader in change management and human behavior, that doesn't happen. And so we want to have our expectations correctly. So what we do is we say you need to have what we call lag measures and lead measures. So in this example, a lag measure, sometimes we see these in school districts. They'll say, hey, we want you to increase the attendance, you know, of our kids at school. Well, that's an understandable measure. Maybe that's something you want to look at. Attendance is important. A lot of states measure attendance, and certainly that's a significant indicator of activities with students. It doesn't mean how engaged they are just because they're there, but it is an indicator, right? And so you might say what we want is to be able to see an increase in attendance from this much to that much by this much time. And so usually that people get that far.
Marty, did you freeze on us? Darren, Marty. Darren, I think we lost Marty. I don't see him. Darren, are you there? Okay, it seems like we're having a mechanical, a technology glitch. So give me a second. Let me. Okay. Okay, everyone, there is a technology glitch. He's changing computers. The computer he was on crashed. So while we're waiting, are there any comments from anyone? Okay. Any comments from anyone of where we are? It seems to me like communication is really one of the themes for us, the culture, as we look to the goals that we might want to put in place for this coming year. And the community, creating community amongst ourselves and with our constituents. So is there any other comments of what you see, what you're experiencing while we're waiting for Marty to reconnect? Board member Madeline LaCelia.
Yeah, so I was thinking as we were, as Marty was speaking, there's such a wealth of experience and skills within the board.
Yes.
I think it would be really great if we can take ownership of some of our own development. I mean, now we have 2 licensed clinical social workers on the board. We have experience, for example, I'm Myers-Briggs certified. I know that our Sephora is also certified in a lot of trainings, and all of us have something to give back to the board. So it would be amazing if we can take some ownership and create some opportunities for us to create community within ourselves and share our experiences.
You know, I was thinking about the same thing, and one of the ways that we could do that is to set that as one of our goals and something that we could start doing this year as we speak. Because, for instance, if we wanted to do something once a quarter, maybe one of you would volunteer to create something. I'm not dictating that. I am just suggesting that that might be a point to start. Another point could be we put together a group of 2 or 3 board members to create a proposal to bring back to the rest of us. It just depends on how fast you want to establish something and how soon you want us to experience it. Many things die by committee. I learned that many years ago, but it would be the pleasure of this board as to, how we would want to move forward.
I agree. I think if we connect as maybe pairs or triads and use our expertise to create a day of learning, that would be a great way to just spearhead an initiative.
Okay, and one of the things too is how much time would you be willing to commit? Because, everybody works, but me, I think, on this board. So it's still big. Okay, Marty is back. Marty, we just started down another path, but we can regroup another time. But Madeline, we will not lose this thought and this train, okay? So
sounds good.
Welcome back, Marty. I can't hear you, Marty. Still can't hear you, Marty. Something's not connected. The video, maybe. Did you join by video? Can't hear you. Do you need to go back out and come back in? No, I'm going to let you work with Cindy. Okay, Madeline, we're going to continue down that conversation that we had started. So let's go back to the dual triad, however we want to do it. And Marty, when I can hear you, you speak, and I'll acknowledge that. But to move forward, I think that's a good idea. And other board members, how do you feel about this suggestion that board member LaSallier just put on the table? Anybody? Anybody in agreement to a day of learning from each other has given us an opportunity to get to know each other? How you feel about it? No comment? Okay, Rain, our student board member, come with your wisdom.
Okay, so I think a day of sharing our visions, like our equal visions of, what we are looking forward to this upcoming school year. And of course, a day for us to really get to bond and get to know each other would be beneficial. That's something I'd be definitely willing to do. And I think it would be well, and I'm sorry for the background noise if you hear any. Sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
Okay. Like I said, I think that would be very beneficial coming from all of us as board members. It would also give me an opportunity, and Ms. Rout being the newest board members, to really get to know everyone and dive into what is the future of the board going to look like? What is the future of PGCPS going to look like? So we can really come together as that one voice and be united. And through that, sharing our visions and working alongside each other.
I appreciate that. Board member Rout.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do think that I was silent because I didn't, as the newest member, I didn't know what has been done in the past. So I just wanted to listen. But when I saw my my colleague raise her hand, I said, oh, I'm gonna raise my hand too, because I got something to say. But I do think that it's worth us retreating to share our collective goals. So I do support that. Because we all need to be on one accord before we provide expectations to our new superintendent. Now I'm a firm believer a lot of new is good. So I don't know if it's been tried in the past or not. But I have a question. Is that something that's been done in the past? Like, a retreat to establish, where we're going and where we would like to be by the end of the school year?
Well, I think, okay, let me say this. We're breaking new ground this year because what we're attempting to do is have shared goals with the superintendent, rather than the superintendent have a set of goals and we evaluate them. So we're going down a new path. Now, having said that, I think and I don't need to speak for Madeline LaSallier, she can speak for herself, but I think what she is suggesting is that we can do more than one thing at one time. So in addition to that, maybe we could carve out and maybe we might not be able to do it in person. Maybe we start out virtually with our colleagues sharing some of their expertise around some things that we can do together that just help us to understand each other more. Is what I believe, Madeline. Jump in.
That's correct, Madam Chair. Basically, we all have expertise, and I, for one, would volunteer perhaps to do a Myers-Briggs presentation for the board so that we could, so that the opportunities for expertise would be ways that we can create community, but also get to learn our different styles. Because, for example, for Myers-Briggs, not all of us are extroverted. Some of us may be introverted and our energy comes differently. So explaining that and looking and then examining each other's strengths. I know that I'm not going to speak for Sephora, but Sephora also has strengths training. So she can do a workshop for us and kind of, we could figure out, okay, so what is my strength? How can I capitalize on that in this board? So it's just ways to using the skills that we have already to create a stronger board.
That's right. And it doesn't have to be super structured. I mean, the time we would have to identify where board members can attend it, whether you want it virtually in person, that decision would need to be made. And then whether you needed 1 or 2 hours, that decision would also be made. But Dr. Zipporah Miller and then Brandon Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Board Member LaSallier Frazier, I absolutely would love to do that. I know we have talked about it, and we have we have diverse skill sets on this board, and I am itching to learn what other skill sets are on this board. I really, really like to capitalize on the strength of others. I think the we is better than the me. So, I'm absolutely volunteering myself as well, but I would also, no, I don't want to say but, and I would like to offer, many times we go on a retreat, we have a great retreat, and then we come back, and then we get back to business as usual. What I would like to propose is, as we do the day of learning, half day of learning, however we choose to do those day of learning, how can we take that back to having them 15 minutes out of our executive session each time to continue to build community? Because building community takes time, and a one-shot deal is going to set us up for failure, because we'll have a great time that one time, and then we'll come back to business as usual. But if we continue to remind ourselves during regular convenings and carve out that time during times that we already meet, we can probably continue to discover more about ourselves, build a stronger board, and build more cohesive relationships that we can collaborate amongst ourselves with more transparency.
Yeah, one thing that I would add before Brandon speaks is that it doesn't necessarily have to be an executive session. There are some things, your skill sets could help the community as well as you are helping us. So it just depends upon what it is. So I'm saying don't limit it to just executive session. Brandon? Brandon?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. I was just trying to get off mute.
Okay.
Maddie touched on, my heart is in Myers-Briggs, man. I love Myers-Briggs. Strength finders, the DISC assessment, like all of those things are great tools. As you start to build out a team. I think that those are tools that we can use for sure. But one thing about those tools that I think it goes back to our initial point is that, like, in order to really understand and receive that information, like, you have to be willing, and I hate to say this again, you have to be vulnerable again. Like you have to trust, and it has to be like a certain culture where it's like you care, right? Because it's like, oh, Maddie, you are INTJ, I'm an ENFP, or you are IN. Like I have to care about you enough to know that this is how you communicate. This is how you see the world from this particular perspective. Like, and I think once we establish that baseline, I think adding those tools later will be great. But I think first we need to establish a baseline of that mutual respect and be willing to be teachable and listen and all of those great things that we talked about. And I think after we do that, now it's like give us tools to start to work with each other in tandem. That's what I think.
Yeah, thank you. Zipporah, before I come back to you, let me check in with Marty. Marty, can I hear you now?
I don't know, but I hope you
I
can.
think I
I'm
can
hearing you guys.
Yeah, I think I can hear you now. So if you don't mind, if we'll close out with Zipporah of this conversation that we are having. And then ladies, we will, and board members all, we will revisit this, I promise you. Zipporah?
Thank you. Brandon, I like the way you put it in terms of, be it Myers-Briggs or Gallup Strength Finders, in which I'm certified in, whatever it is we choose, or it could be a combination of 2 or 3 different things. Once we understand what it is, the reason I was suggesting that it comes back to executive session is if we don't immerse it in the work, we lose it. So as we work together and your top 5, Prince George's County is already they already have Gallup Strength Finders. We can bring in Myers-Briggs, and as we bring those in and immerse it in the work, that is how they learn to communicate with one another. So if your top 5, you have focus in one of the top 5, then they know how to better communicate with board member X versus Y, who may appreciate more context when they're communicating. And that just helps in understanding each other and how you approach your work.
Yes, I'm familiar with Myers-Briggs. We did that a lot when I was at NOAA, but I'm not familiar with the last one that you spoke of, Zipporah, so maybe it couldn't hurt to introduce us to them both, as we move forward. So I appreciate this conversation, and as I have said, I promise that we will revisit. I think you two ladies need to think about how much time would you need to do one of those? Would you want to do it collectively together? And then we could present a proposal, to the board around some times to do it, if you're willing to accept that suggestion. Okay? Okay, Zipporah?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, thank you. Marty, we're back to you.
So I want you to know the 18 years on the board when we got a new superintendent, we did do the DISC and the strengths finder of the superintendent and the board. And those are great tools because, to Brandon's point, they cause you to be vulnerable. They cause you to want to be teachable and correctable. So in and of themselves, they're moving you towards being a cohesive team. And it's about what Brandon and several of you've already talked about. It's about creating that culture where we genuinely love, care about, and seek to understand one another. And we want to be able to perpetuate that out to our community. So good job on being forced to have a great conversation while my computer crashed. I can't believe it just crashed. Anyway,
you tell Covey to buy you a better computer.
Right, come on. So can we go to slide number 14, please?
Okay.
Slide 14, because this is what it's going to come down to. So this was our last one. Let's go to the next one. We can go through these. Thank you, Cindy. Next slide. So let's stop here for a moment. So here's what we're saying is that at some point we're going to need a plan that shows the community that the superintendent and the board are on the same page.
Right.
They're moving an initiative forward. One is through direction, shared vision, like we talked about with the car, but there's the management side, implementation, and that's done by the superintendent. And so what are the look-fors that are going to move it? So you as a board are going to be able to have to not only say we are a cohesive team, but that we have a true understanding of our community. We really do. We know what's important to our community. In fact, we can give words to what's important to the community that puts them at a place of trust when we share it. And so that's one of the actions that we're going to need to be able to move towards. And when you have that, then you're going to be able to start developing the accountability. That's long term. But what we're saying right now is we're going to have to do some work to be able to create that voice for the community. But what we can do right now is to say, what do we as a board believe that we can do to bring support to the superintendent in this first year of his tenure in our district, right? So that's what I'm suggesting that we look for toward in terms of that accountability plan. You've already shared that you would help with some connections, you would do some championing of causes, you would open doors from stakeholders to increase voice. So you've already shared some things that you believe you can do. He's also shared some things. I heard him say, and he's going to send them to you, but he said on Wednesdays, he's going to use every Wednesday. I think I heard him say that. So please don't have me say something he didn't say. But he was going to use Wednesdays maybe from 8 to 1 to visit schools. And he's got 200 schools to try to hit. And it sounds like he's committed to going out and investing in the lives of real people at his schools. So your accountability plan might be that you're both looking to be able to enable him to have these meaningful visits at schools. And maybe it is that there's areas where you as a board can accompany him or something. You know, these are the things that you're going to want to work out together, right? So that he's not spending all this time getting to know you, but maybe the times that you're getting to know each other is when you're going out and sharing in a visit at a school together or something like that, or in some of the community engagements that he wants to make. And I also heard him say that he was very open to taking board directors to those community engagement pieces as well. So that might be where, Judy, you and your team as a board look at it and say, okay, first year, we're going to increase community engagement with our new superintendent. That might be a very significant and right initiative to have. So what does that mean for you as a board? What are you as a board willing to do? And what is the superintendent believing that you can do that supports what his goals are? Next slide. So this creates what you would call an accountability plan that is shared between the superintendent and the board. So the board's in agreement with what they want to do. They have one voice, remember? So when you say we want to increase community engagement, you as a board have to know what community engagement means to you as a board. You need to know what it is that we believe we want to be able to accomplish, and what we believe that we can do to support the superintendent as he's accomplishing his goals as well. But you just want to make sure that what you're doing is coming up with those one or two, perhaps community engagements one. You can look at it, but it needs to be student-centric, right? The initiatives need to be ultimately what you're trying to do is in the best interest of the student. And to your student board members' point, you need student voice in that. You can't say, yeah, we're student-centric if you don't have student voice, right? And so we need to make sure we are inclusive of that student voice in it. And then again, you're just looking at, these will be the most relevant things, and they are going to increase the community's confidence. So if you were to look at it now, board, you've had some good conversation, which only because I could hear you, I just couldn't be heard. But I was listening to you. You are wanting to grow as a cohesive team, and you're also wanting to engage your community. So perhaps another goal is to increase board, just effectiveness. That you as a board know how to be more effective than what you have been before. It doesn't matter how much or how little you were before. That's not the point. The point is that you know that you have certain things in place to be effective. And what I would suggest with you is that a best practice requires standard operating procedures. And I heard the superintendent acknowledge that as well. You've it's not just norms. People will call them norms. You've got to have specific activities that move the right things forward. You just got to have it. And so my suggestion to you as a team is that we get together, or you get together, and you start mapping out what we would call best practices for standard operating procedures as a board. In other words, we will do this because it moves the right things forward. We will not do this because it undermines moving the right things forward. Does that make sense? What do you think, board? I'm listening to you now.
Well, I will share that the superintendent, our new superintendent, his team is already working on some standard operating procedures, for the board, because our board staff reports to them. So what we might want to suggest is that as they do that work, we assist, or in some way they send it to us and we review or something and add input somehow. So I know
Sure.
that work has begun. That's what I wanted to get on the table. I see Dr. Kenneth Harris's hand up.
Hey, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Kenny.
So I do agree with the notion of standard operating procedures. One of the main things I'd ask upfront when dealing with becoming more, dealing with that keyword effective or efficient, is the metric by which you measure that. Because it's not a test in the lab where we can say these tests look better than these tests. And so I'd be interested to know what the metrics, what the rubric, what the scale looks like when grading the efficiency of the board as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr.
Kenneth,
Sephora
thank you
Miller.
very-
Oh, I'm sorry, Marty.
Yeah,
You want to?
I'm just going to respond. Yeah, I want to respond to Kenneth because he's absolutely right. So Kenneth, we've built some templates, and then what we do, to Judy's earlier point, is that we come in and we co-construct them with you so that there's build-in. We're building it together. It's not we're going to come in and say this is what you need to do. It's what we as the board agree that we can do, right? And just like with the superintendent, it should be co-constructed. You're building it together because of the fact that your voice needs to be in those standard operating procedures, and you need to know what the measurements look like. So we have some templates, but the value of it is co-constructing them with you.
Okay, thank you. Dr.
Yes,
Sephora Miller. Oh, Kenny, did you
wanted
want to say
to,
something?
Yes, sorry. Do you mind, Dr. Miller, if I do one follow-up?
I don't. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, one follow-up to that is historically, Marty, have you all used, I guess, needs-based assessments from the community to kind of feed into those templates?
Correct. And so you begin with community concerns and creating platforms for voice. And then in that, again, what you're actually doing, it's amazing when you do it holistically, is that when you do your evaluations, the community can see into and be a part even of the evaluation. So in year one, they may or may not, just depends on how you want to build it. But the evaluations can be pretty comprehensive. But then they're going to tie back to what we call a community dashboard, where the community can see through the lens of the district how their concerns were heard and acted upon. And they can also see areas where they can bring value to help move those initiatives forward. So we come at it from a very comprehensive point.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Dr. Miller and Chair Mickens-Murray. And thanks, Marty.
No worries.
Thank you, Dr. Miller.
No, I did hear the superintendent say that he was designing standard operating procedures, but I also remember us as a board in the retreat articulating that we needed to have some standard operating procedures that we were going to put together as to how we work together as a board and as how we work together with the superintendent. So my question and comment would be, I would like to have more clarity on what that document he is creating so that we're not duplicating efforts. That's one. But I believe that, as board chair said, if that's for the staff, then we still, and it is imperative that we sit down together and develop our standard operating procedures of how we communicate as a board, and also how we communicate not just internally, externally, and also with the superintendent.
I agree with you, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's all comprehensive, Dr. Miller, but I will double check that and let you know. And the board, I know that they're going to share it with the board and give us an opportunity to weigh in. It's kind of brand new. Staff is really starting to work on it. So I think this is a good conversation that we're having. And since our superintendent is on the phone and so is his chief of staff, they hear our comments. So thank you for that.
Board Chair, can I just piggyback on that?
Sure.
Because I know that they're working on one, but the way we interact as a board together, I don't think it's something that he would define. That's something that we would define.
And I agree with that as well. So like I said, we may need to go down two paths, but I don't know that yet. That's all I'm saying.
So now you have two initiatives.
Jocelyn, I'm sorry, Marty.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
go
thank
ahead.
you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for
Yeah.
recognizing me. I do support what Board Member Miller has stated. I just didn't want to put the cart before the horse. I'm looking forward to seeing what he would like to present to the board, but I do think strongly that a collaborative effort would be best in moving the culture and designing the culture. So I'm just looking forward to receiving it and weighing in. And hopefully it's going to be possibly in draft form so that we would have an
It will be.
opportunity to
Yes,
hear it.
I promise
Thank
you,
you.
it will be in draft form.
Thank you.
And it was just shared with Lolita and myself this morning. So it's very new, very new. Okay, and I do know that Superintendent House's chief of staff has extensive experience working with school boards and school staff. And I think that's a benefit. So it will be interesting to see the model that they create that we will weigh in on. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you. Back to you, Marty.
So I'm seeing two potential steps in being able to create support and effectiveness in this first new year of opportunity to come together as a board and team. One is around the area of the board becoming cohesive, connected, and knowing how to communicate. That is certainly an area where you as a board have a lot of control over. That's an area where you can build some opportunities to evaluate yourself in some specific areas of progress that would be measurable, that would also be able to give evidence to the community why they can have confidence in what you're doing as a board. So that's a particular area that you may want to move on. Another specific thing that you may be able to do as a board underneath that plan is adopting standard operating procedures for one voice. And so I think that one is already moving forward at some level, but it might be that you're able to use that, the fact that it's already in motion to be able to have that be a part of an evaluation process. So have you collaboratively been able to work together as a team to build standard operating procedures that are in the best interest of both the board and the superintendent and his team? That could be another area that you may really want to be secure in this year because it's a collaborative movement, right?
Okay.
And so that's the difference. We talked in our last retreat about the difference between buy-in and build-in. That's very significant. The culture of build-in is more difficult. You're building it together, you're co-constructing it. Buy-in is, we believe that these are best practices, please do them, and we're going to measure this whether you do or don't. That's not the culture that is really what I think your board's wanting to move forward. You're wanting that co-construct, and I'm confident that it will move in that direction just because of who you are as a board, right?
Right.
So that's already giving us some clarity, Judy, around those potential areas of accountability for both the board and the superintendent. What I want to do is to make sure that you as your board have the opportunity, because we're not making any votes, we're not doing anything like that, but we're talking about opportunities of things that you may want to be able to use as the things that you're going to measure. The structure for measuring them is what we are talking about. The structure is we're going to find initiatives, we're going to say that this is where we think we are, this is where we think we need to get to, and this is how we're going to get there. And then you're going to have look fors that as we do it, as we get there, these are the particular things we want to make sure we put our energy in because that moves us in the right direction. And these are the things that we don't want to do. So that's what we develop when we come in and work with a school district and create an accountability plan. And then you're able to be able to go out to your community and say, year one, this is what we're seeking to accomplish. And then there's some transparency in that, and the community can see that, yeah, that's in everybody's best interest to have you be successful in those outcomes. And there's also a sense where the community gets to have some accountability too, right? They get to look into it and say, yes, you are moving it, because the community often will grade a school board in so many different ways. If you're a realtor, they grade the school board on property values, right? They'll say our property values are increasing or decreasing based upon the reputation of the schools. I mean, there's so many ways that boards and districts are being measured and evaluated. What we want to be responsible to do is to say, we believe that these are the most important things for us to do right now. And we do want you to be aware that we are doing them, and this is the success we're seeking to make. And we're willing to have your input, and we want to be transparent and allow you to see the progress, that we're making. So if we go to the slides, you'll see that the opportunity. Let's go back to our slides if we can. And then Judy, just because I want to be careful, conscientious of time, I'm looking for about maybe a half hour more. Are we okay with that?
I think we are. I think we booked this session for 4 hours, so we're good.
All right. So if we'll go to the next slide, please, Cindy. Thank you.
This is just a note from one of the sign language interpreters. I was only booked until 7 p.m. I'm not sure if my other interpreter is able to stay as well. I'm just going to check in and see.
Please, thank you, and let me know.
I am able to stay.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
So the impact questions are this, and the formatting's got messed up a little bit, but when you look at your own agendas as a board, are you able to see how they integrate and become part of that collective voice so that you're moving things together that are of a greater purpose than one single agenda, right? And so we know that we've discussed that, we're moving in that direction. But Judy, this is where I want your board to work is if your board started to write down what they believe, trying to articulate their community's top concerns. If they said, these are the things that are the most important to the community, because your superintendent needs to be able to hear that. You are very reflective of your community. Good job, board. You have student voice. You have different segments of your community represented on your board. So are you able to articulate some of the concerns that they have, the needs, the wants, the desires, right? So that they're confident that you know who they are and where they're going. So I'm encouraging you as a board to continue to write that down, articulate it, and bring it together so that we have a collective voice. Next slide. And when I talk about a now initiative, this is what we're talking about. It's the community knows that what you're doing is very relevant, very important. In fact, they want to be a part of the solution. They're not just sitting on the sideline, judging the district. They so believe in your initiatives that they're willing to do their part. And on the school district side, you'll often hear, a superintendent will say, I want the teachers, the principals, the parents, I want the school bus drivers, the other staff to know that they can make a difference to set students up for success. We're not just going to work each day, we're setting up students to be successful in life. That's what we're really doing. And each of us has a part to play, and each of us needs one another to fulfill that part. That's what I mean by a compelling initiative. And I'm going to be, I'll send a slide back to you, Judy, but I want to make sure that your board has articulated it. So if we look at that now initiative, it should be compelling, purposeful. It should describe what's needed to be able to go from one level to the next. And it's a clear statement about the advantages of moving there, and the difference that it's going to make, and how we can be a part of it.
Okay.
But my thoughts to you, Judy, and your team is that if we don't have that, if we don't have these now initiatives, then we're, what initiatives are we moving forward? What are we doing, right? Well, we're trying to do about 17 things. This is where you come down to the 2 or 3.
Right, and I would suggest this as we move towards our own accountability. Do not have that today, but it is
Right.
something that we can work towards.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Today, you're going to be doing well to say in this first year, we're going to have standard operating procedures that both the board and the district will feel great about, right?
Right.
You're going to have a community engagement plan that both you and the superintendent, the board and superintendent's team are going to feel great about. If you got those 2 things done this year, I think it'd be a very effective year.
Yeah, and were you speaking to those things being the now initiative? Because I could appreciate a now initiative around community engagement.
Yeah, really, for this year, that really would be a now initiative. If I'm a community person, whether I'm a parent or I run the McDonald's, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you came to me and you said, we've got a new superintendent. And what we're really seeking to do is understand the voice of the community so that we're able to build solutions that are going to be in everybody's best interest.
Right.
I'm
And this
listening.
is something, okay, I'm just thinking out loud. This is something that the district board members who know their communities can weigh in or do an assessment within their communities through maybe some surveys or something to tease out, what those important things are, that one important thing is that we need to connect to. So.
Right. So each one of your districts may have some different areas of concerns,
right.
But you're able to really bring that back together, and you're actually exponentially increasing the effectiveness of your superintendent being able to hear the voice of the community, because he said that was a very significant part of his first year plan. So I think it is a now initiative, and you as a board can really come alongside. So then you as a board have to look at it and say, how much time do we have for this? So you talked about connect groups, you talked about a lot of different things, and you as a board decide, yeah, we're going to do here's some of the things we're going to seek to do. But you also said that you as a board would learn how to be cohesive and communicate. So I'm suggesting that that's really part of a standard operating procedures, right? One voice is a standard operating procedure. So the second now initiative, if you came to a community member and you said, we're going to, as a board, we want to be very effective. We want to be a cohesive team. Therefore, we're establishing norms and standard operating procedures. I think that is a now initiative. I think they would say, yeah, that's a very important thing to do. Make sure you get that right.
Okay, well, thank you for that insight. Appreciate it.
Next slide. So when we came in and we looked at your board, we did a analysis on how well you felt you were moving in that area of being cohesive. Your numbers were showing that you were at that beginning state. I like what Brandon said, where you're kind of creating a new culture. That's really what the evidences were. And so as you're creating this new culture, you're committed to doing something. We know that this is an area where we can look at and say, each one of these components is significant, and we're keeping our eyes on these, right? And so we're coming back in community engagement. You're helping the community also to see the big picture, because you got to see the big picture. You're acknowledging to the community that their concerns isn't the end, it's their concerns, and that's their portion, and it's important to hear. And sometimes other districts may not agree with theirs, right? So you have to build that in as you go out, that not everybody's always going to agree on everything, but you're working together collectively to do what's in the best interest of all, right?
Right.
And so you as a board are modeling this, you're doing it, but you're also helping the community understand that that's what collaborative problem solving is. And you've already talked about number 3 as a board about strength finders and other even assets and tools and growing and understanding the weaknesses and strengths of each other so that you can really leverage each other's experience and expertise. Number 4 is that area where I think that we as a board kind of keep this as a part of our board evaluation, right? These same 5 things, because we've already gotten one tested. Now we can see if there's been movement. But do we actually believe that each person has the student's best interest in mind? How are we growing in that area? And then, the last thing is you can't be cohesive as a team if we don't feel like each person genuinely cares about us. So I'm just suggesting that we keep this as part of the board evaluation. And so it's just a suggestion from me to your board.
Understand?
Yeah, and so you guys can use that. We can work with you. Then you can get down to the measurables that Jonathan was speaking about on, and then how specific do we want to go on that? That's very fair. Next slide. Cindy, so there was your scores. And now we're looking at, this is another area for a board evaluation. What we want to do is make sure that we're moving forward with growth mindsets. And so remember, this is an important way to look at the behavioral patterns that are establishing trust or eroding it. And so this is a tool that can also be used in board evaluations. We just look at it, are we moving towards that contentious thing? Are we moving towards connection? Are we coming in with a positive mindset? Are we teachable and correctable? Are we collaborative or combative, right? Are we accusing each other, or are we asking meaningful questions? Are we being divisive, or are we creating a space for inclusion? Again, we did our ABC. So a reminder that this is also part of board evaluation. Next. And so, Judy, what I'm doing here is just giving you guys some potential tools that you could use in your board evaluations.
Right. And, I was also thinking, I know some school boards at the end of each meeting, once they get their accountability plan in place, they'll do an assessment of what their actions were, behaviors were during the meeting. And I was looking at this thinking that maybe this or some set of this could be something that we could, because it's just checking a box. If you put it in a form, you're just checking a box. And that's a way for each of us to put ourselves in check. Just evaluating ourselves after a school board meeting. So yeah, this is good. Thank you.
Next slide. What we talked about here is that, and we've already kind of hit on this being teachable and correctable, and it came up in a natural conversation. But we have to actually believe that the collective voice is more powerful than the single voice. That's all that is. And this is another tool, Judy, that your team can use after like retreats. Were we open? Did we value the differences? Did we come up with an alternative that was, or an idea that was bigger than what we originally came in thinking, right? So this is just, these are some potential tools. And then when you and your board look at them and say, yeah, these ones make sense, what we do is we come back and we build them in a template to be able to do a board evaluation on.
Okay, thank you.
And this is the way to measure collaboration and outcomes. Next slide. this is the most basic board evaluation is being sent to you, but it's what can usually happen in the first year of a board evaluation. We built this in the midst of the pandemic to be able to bring teams back together at a place of really collaborating and valuing each other. And so it was just 10 questions. Some of them have to do more with the mechanics and the governance of being on the board. Others have to do with actions of building team. But they all have specific outcomes desired that you can see. And so what we do with these, and this is just, again, this is the most basic of all the models we built, but it gives you a chance to say, okay, how am I doing in these areas? That's what you do in the first part of the year. In the second part of the year, Judy, we come back and we say, how are you and the other board members doing? So now the second evaluation is you evaluate yourself looking for progress, but you also evaluate the other board members.
Okay.
So that you have a good conversation. And at that point, you're able to have what I heard somebody say earlier. You can have some hard conversations. You can be a little bit more vulnerable. And that often opens the doors for improvement as well.
Okay.
And that really concludes the information I had for us tonight.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the time that you've taken to help us. Did you want to speak to this slide or not?
Yeah, this is the one that I spoke to earlier, that when you are able to truly engage your community and you have the evaluation, the board evaluation, this is what it looks like. You now have community has shared their concerns. Your superintendent knows how to build the right goals around it, right? Because your superintendent has to work with goals that come from the federal government, from the states. There's all these requirements that he and his team are needing to be able to build in and make sure that they're addressed and met. But the primary thing is to tie those and understand what the community's concerns are. So the community shares their concerns. The district is able to say, okay, we've built goals that meet those. Once you have that community voice, that's where the board initiatives make the most sense to the community. That's the accountability plan. It works in all three directions. It works. The community can hold you accountable. You can hold you accountable, and you can do your work of overseeing, supporting, and holding the superintendent and his team accountable. But you've got to have those initiatives that are directly connected to the voice of the community.
Yeah,
then
so
once you do that, go ahead, Judy.
Yeah, it sounds to me like the very first thing we need to do then is to take a pulse of the voice of the community. And we would have to do that through the 9 districts.
Correct.
Okay,
So
and
that you
that
can
could
then-
be a survey. You guys have templates for surveys, or maybe the system already has some, I don't know. But I can check.
We work with school districts because you often have different surveys that you're already using. So if you are,
Right.
then you want to be able to carry that data forward. But we also have some surveys that we can recommend as well. But you want to make sure that you're hearing from your community and that then you're speaking back to the community, showing them that their concerns have been heard and that you're moving those initiatives forward. You have a hand up too.
I see Jocelyn's hand.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. So would that be a survey that sends out? I just have a clarifying question. I know there's been many different surveys and survey methods that have been sent out to parents because I was a recipient, of the surveys. Is this something new that we should do, or is this something that we should yield the data that we already have?
What I'm thinking is that I'm sure we have something in our system, especially with all of the blueprint and accountability and all that stuff that we've been doing.
Yeah, it was a lot
So
of
I
stuff.
was first going to check
Okay.
with the administration to see what is the latest, greatest that we already have. And then if we share that, I'm sure that the board members that are within the districts, after they review that, will have a sense of, did it capture everything that you guys already see? I don't know. So let the next step for me be to check with the superintendent to see what's there. Maybe we did something at the end of the year last year. I don't know. Zipporah, do you know of anything we might have done in the area of surveys?
I know there was service, I just can't remember, and I'm not at a place where I can look, but I can always go back to my notes and see.
Yeah, but I can just ask the administration. I'm sure that our superintendent, he can ask somebody on staff and they would probably get it for me quicker, because you're on vacation, you're enjoying yourself. So I don't want you to do that kind of work on vacation. Okay, and thank you for joining us on vacation too. I let the world know she's on vacation out of the country, but she's on this meeting. Thank you. Mr. Briggs?
Yeah, thanks so much, Chair Mickensbury. So I just had a question for a clarifying question. So I guess as far as process, I get that the community voice is kind of the first piece of that. So let's say hypothetically it's infrastructure and they say we want to see more schools built, and that's likely already in our plan. That's, you know, one of those are things that have been passed through legislation and other things. So that's a part of what's already happening. I guess my question to you is, first question is like, how nitty gritty are we getting with these things, right? When we ask for measurements from the community, say, hey, have we met your expectation around your priorities? Let's say that they said, I want to school in District 2. We need to have this built, you know, by 2025, right? How is your suggestion these are high level themed questions? I know you talked about the Now initiative, and so I'm assuming that's very high level, right? These are themes, mental health or infrastructure or whatever else may be. They're not like unpacked goals. So can you just clarify for us there, if that makes sense, if the question makes sense?
Marty, he's talking to you.
You are correct, Jonathan, in what you're saying. It is the higher level goal, and it's not always the community's, you know, what are your expectations, though that ultimately it really is, what kind of concerns do you have, and what are your hopes, what are your expectations? We want to couch it in a way that we really do want to hear what's important to them. We also, remember, want to do what your own board said. Several of you just are right on it, that you're reconnecting with them, that you're championing, that you're cheerleading, that you're able to say, we as a board are coming together, we're being cohesive, we're working together, we're building a great team, not only as a board, but as a board and a superintendent. We're going to make sure that community voices increase. And so we're out here engaging you as a community because we want you to know we're, you know, moving together as a team. Sometimes that might be as important as just another survey. But when you go to talk to your community, when you engage in your community, so what's important, you need to also be able to share, and this is what we're doing. This is what we're currently doing. And get their feedback on that, because a lot of times they're going to give you great feedback on, thank you so much that you're providing space for your superintendent to make sure that they're out visiting schools. Thank you that you're accompanying your superintendent when you come out into our district so that we can have listening meetings, right? And so it might be that we're also reinforcing what we're doing right in those community meetings as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I appreciate that. And I was just, again, for the process map that you had there, I was just trying to clarify, because I know we're in a unique situation, so this is probably very different from what a typical situation is. Just superintendent's been in place for some time, you know, they have their insight. So this is a little backwards because we're collecting data maybe after from the community voice. So then maybe in year 2, like how can we filter that in? So I just was curious for board members that maybe like me might have been confused about the process. It might not be exactly in that process map. Maybe it's a little bit backwards, but I guess I defer to you on your clarification there.
Absolutely. You're going to, as a board, you are in a unique position, and I like it because you've got a new superintendent. So in some sense, you can really have that as a way of building momentum, right? Because you've got a high quality, amazing superintendent, and your superintendent is about doing the right things, and you as a board are coming together to cohesively work together with them. Right. And so that's an encouraging word that your community wants to hear. But as you share that, Jonathan, that's year 1. Year 2, they're going to say, okay, what have you done for me lately, right? They're going to move it more towards here were our expectations. And so, but year two will be different than year one, to your point.
Okay, Dr. Zipporah Miller, I saw your hand. Did you still want to comment or not?
I did, but mine was going back to something else. So I didn't want to interfere with this conversation first, and then I can go back.
Oh, okay. So I think my action is to go back and check in with the superintendent to see what data, because I'm thinking in terms of climate, I'm thinking in terms climate in the classrooms, climate in the building.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of safety, because that's of a concern with many parents, and especially those of us in the community. And then we get to the academics piece, and like board member John, well, to be correct, infrastructure, because someone called me the other night about a school that had been refurbished, comparing it to a school that the new schools that we're building. So I get it. So I need to look at what did we measure, or what have we measured, and what is the latest data that's available by district in certain high level categories. So and I think I have a list someplace. But anyway, I'll take that as an action, and I'll get back to the board members about that. But from what I hear you saying, Marty, we need to get that voice of the community first. And then we start to at least hone in on what our evaluation and accountability plan looks like, because we need to consider the values that are out there in our community.
And when you're getting to leverage, now you're absolutely right. In alignment with what Jonathan and Kenneth and others shared too, in this, it's so amazing that as you're out there getting your voice, you're also telling them that you have assurance and confidence in your new superintendent. You're excited because he's out there wanting voice as well. He's wanting the same things that were important to you, that you as a board said that you want to be committed to, right? You also get to share that not only are we excited about our new superintendent, but we're excited about our board building a new culture. That's a huge thing for your community to hear.
Okay, if I go back to you, Zipporah, are you ready for your question? Because I'm thinking that maybe we can end this meeting like within the next 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Mine is also a clarification question. I'd like to go back to standard operating procedures. That is something that is near and dear to me. I love to work within structures. And I think that as we talked about in the last meeting in June, that we were going to really consider how we were going to work together and put together our standard operating procedures. And because we know that the superintendent is working on some, and he called them the board standard operating procedures. While I don't know what they are, I'm pretty sure because he is responsible for operations, he needs to let us know, how do you communicate with me? How do you communicate with my staff? How do you communicate when there's a parent concern? I see that as different from how us as a board communicate and work together. So and then we need to figure out the synergy between the two to make sure that there's alignment. But I'm not, as we get the draft, I'm thinking in terms of the co-creation. Do we need to wait for that to be ready for us to start working on ours? So that's my question.
Okay, I think after this conversation tonight, and I think, as I said before, Quincy Board, his chief of staff, and I believe he is still listening. Let me go back to them tomorrow, because from what I understand, the concept that they're bringing in is board services. How do we communicate with the administration? Administration communicates back to us. I hear what you're saying, Zipporah, that maybe some board members need to be a part of that process. But like I said, we just found out this morning. And you're hearing it tonight. So let me go back tomorrow and check in with our superintendent, and then I'll get back to all board members, and I will put out a statement or something, or we'll put out a joint statement.
Chairman Mickens Murray, what
what I
Oh,
do
you're
here
still
as
here.
well.
Good.
Yes, ma'am. What I do here as well is collaboration is extremely important.
Okay.
So we want to share, the document with you and Lolita, the rest of the board, and get feedback. These are suggested opportunities with this board operating manual procedures. They didn't exist, and I believe having a draft in place for you all to take a look at, it may be that there are suggestions that come back. So we eagerly look forward to getting the draft to you guys to take a close look at.
Dr. Miller, are you okay with that process?
So clarifying the document that Dr. Superintendent House is creating is really encompassing how we will work with his team. But my question was how we as a board, the 14 of us, would work together. And I think they are and should be in alignment with what he's working on.
Okay, well then let me say this. Maybe what we need to do then, separating out what the superintendent is doing, maybe we need to put together a board team to address the issues that you're raising, which you can be a part of that team. And then the two come together. How's that? How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay, then. So when are you coming back to the United States?
Next week, and it is midnight over here, but
Okay, well, when you get back, can you let's have a conversation so that we can put that in place. And board members, if you want to work on this with myself and board member Miller, let me know. And this is the piece of the SOP of how 14 board members interact with each other. Okay. Sound good?
Yes,
Anybody?
of course it sounds good. Of course.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Zipporah, and thank you, Superintendent House. All right.
I would,
Okay.
yeah, I would suggest you, Judy, that if you do what you just said, that's a best practice amongst districts, to be able to have it from both the superintendent team's perspective and the board's perspective. You bring that together and you call that the board standard operating procedures. It will be a best practice. It really will. Good job.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Board members, before we close out, because if you're like me, I have a crook in my neck or something. But anyway, any final comments from anyone? Dr. Harris?
Hey, everyone. I just wanted to take a minute to say thank you to the team for putting it together. Thank you, Board Chair Murray. Thank you, Dr. Marty, as well as the committee that got us to this point. Very good discussion, I'd say. A lot of things, like you said, we'll follow up on, but I do think that this was a good place for collaboration tonight. So again, thank you, everyone who made this happen.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Board member Rout?
I too want to say thank you. I already feel a part of the team.
Oh, great.
So I don't know what personality test is, but I'm sure we'll figure it out. I'm blue gold. So which one is that? So I'm a touchy-feely person, but I also like structure, and I got all of that today. And so I'm just so excited. I'm PGCPS proud that we are all going to be, pushing this cart up the hill together. And I'm just looking forward to working with all of you. This is going to be so awesome. And I just want to just thank you, Chair Murray, just for your leadership here today. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks. Any other comments from any other board members before we sign off? Board member Briggs?
Yeah, just going to echo what everyone said. Deep appreciation to you all for putting this together, for being flexible. I know we had a long road to get here. So, and taking time on it, for every board member really, during a time where we are on vacation, being here. So I think overall it was a good meeting, as folks have already shared.
Thank you. And we need to, all board members need to pat themselves on the back, because as a follow-up from the retreat, you wanted to continue to do the work. And then many of
Mhm.
you have made sacrifices because we're supposed to be on break. But you've taken time out of your vacation, and the prize goes to Dr. Zipporah Miller, who it's midnight where she is, and she's here still with us. So I appreciate that. And to the staff, thank you, Cindy, Adeline, and Anise Ellis. And I think it was Jessica. I don't see Jessica. Oh yeah, Jessica Gutierrez. Thank you guys for staying up late with us. Thank you guys for putting all of this together, and thank you guys for helping us to manage this. We appreciate it. Okay. Superintendent House, do you want to say anything before we close out? Because I'm gonna let Marty have the last word. Superintendent House, you gone? Okay. Marty, you want to
Well, I'm so grateful, just like what you're saying. What I think in my final word, I want to acknowledge that I am the very proud graduate of a HISD school. So I was at Douglas MacArthur Elementary, then I graduated from a high school near the center of the town of Houston. And so it's so exciting for me. I've heard so many good things about your superintendent, you folks, and I echo just the momentum that I feel your board has towards really leveraging this opportunity to the best interest of your community. Thank you, each of you, for having that kind of intentionality. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And with that, board members, we will say it is now 7:54 by my clocks. And I don't need a motion to adjourn because I didn't get a motion to start. So thank you guys for joining us, and I will let you know when we will have the next meeting. And Zipporah, I look forward to talking to you when you get back. Okay. Thank you guys. Good night.
Yes. Good night. Good night. Yes, absolutely.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.